In a stunning yet not so stunning move, Christy Wallace has elected not to come back to the Indiana Fever in.
With Christy Wallace stepping away, fans are buzzing about who should fill her spot on the Indiana Fever. Some believe Aerial Powers is the answer, while others question whether she's the right choice. Is she the key to the team's success, or should Indiana explore other options? Let's break it down.
News, and I cannot say that it does not seem like the Indiana Fever were not aware of this decision, as Christy Wallace has elected not to come back, and according to a press release, she says this: "It's not been an easy decision for me, but one that I make knowing it is what is in my best interest at this time. I would like to thank the Fever organization for working with me throughout this process, giving me both time and consideration, and for their support of my decision. I look forward to cheering the team."
When Christy Wallace announced she would be stepping away from the Indiana Fever for the 2025 season, it shook the fan base. Some saw it coming, while others were completely blindsided. What was undeniable, however, was that the Fever now had a gap to fill, which sparked a heated discussion about who should take her spot. Almost immediately, Aerial Powers' name began popping up all over social media, with fans passionately advocating for her to join the team. But is she really the answer? Or is this just another questionable decision for the franchise? Let's break it down. Powers certainly has a strong case. She brings valuable experience, having proven herself as a capable scorer in the WNBA and overseas. Coming off a successful stint abroad, she's in top form, and the idea of her joining Caitlin Clark on the court is intriguing. On paper, it sounds like an exciting pairing. Two players who can light up the scoreboard and create offensive fireworks. The fans are hyped, and understandably so. Powers has been a reliable offensive force with the Washington Mystics and Minnesota Lynx, and her scoring ability speaks for itself. However, not everyone is sold on this move. While her offensive prowess is undeniable, there are valid concerns about whether Powers fits into the team's current structure. Before we jump into the specifics of that debate, let's take a step back and look at how the Fever have been building their team over the last few years. Indiana has been in full rebuild mode after several years of struggling at the bottom of the league. They got a major boost with the 2023 draft when they selected Aaliyah Boston with the #1 overall pick. Boston immediately made her mark, proving to be the cornerstone player the Fever had been missing. But just adding one star player wasn't enough to turn the franchise around. The Fever needed a strong supporting cast to build a competitive team, and that's where Caitlin Clark comes into play. Clark's arrival has completely changed the trajectory of the Fever. One of the most hyped players in recent years, she has brought not just attention, but energy to the team. Her ability to score and lead a fast-paced offense has already elevated the Fever's status, making them one of the most talked-about teams in the WNBA. With Clark running the offense and Boston anchoring the paint, the Fever are in a position to compete for the first time in a while. But that leads to the critical question: how do they build around this dynamic duo? The goal is to create a roster that complements Clark's skill set and builds around the team's strengths, which brings us back to Aerial Powers. Powers, as mentioned, is a natural scorer. She can take over games offensively, create her own shot, attack the basket, and knock down shots from deep. All of these attributes are valuable to a team that needs scoring firepower. During her time with the Mystics and Lynx, Powers has shown she can be a major offensive weapon, and having someone who can score at will is important for any team. However, the Fever are more than just a team that needs a scoring punch. They have a clear vision of their offensive style, one that revolves around ball movement, spacing, and quick decision-making. With Caitlin Clark as the focal point, the offense will likely rely on smart, high-tempo basketball that moves the ball around, creates mismatches, and uses the floor spacing to its advantage. Clark thrives in an offense that emphasizes quick passes and plays off the ball. The question is, does Powers fit into the system? Some fans believe she could be a perfect complement to Clark. If defenses start doubling Clark, which they almost certainly will, having Powers as a secondary scoring option would give the Fever an additional weapon to exploit those situations. Instead of Clark being forced into tough shots, she could pass to Powers, who could capitalize on the open looks. But there's a counterpoint. Powers is not exactly known for being an off-ball player. She's at her best when the ball is in her hands, and she can create plays for herself. While that's great for certain situations, it may not blend seamlessly with the kind of system the Fever are trying to implement under Clark's leadership. Powers may struggle to find her rhythm if she's not the primary ball handler, and that could disrupt the flow of the offense. It's a valid concern that she may not be the ideal fit for a team that is focusing on ball movement and spacing. On the defensive end, the debate intensifies. In today's WNBA, the teams that are winning championships aren't just built on offense. They have defensive players who anchor the team and hold everything together. Take the Las Vegas Aces, for example. They have elite defenders like Aya Wilson, who dominates the paint, and Chelsea Gray, who is a lockdown perimeter defender. The Fever are still in the process of building a defensive identity, and while Aerial Powers can hold her own, she's not necessarily known for her elite defensive capabilities. In a league where defense plays a crucial role in winning titles, Indiana may need to prioritize adding a defensive specialist to balance their roster. Ultimately, the decision to sign Aerial Powers is not an easy one for the Fever. She brings offensive firepower, but there are questions about how she would fit within the system the team is trying to establish. Indiana's future depends on building a roster that complements Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, and while Powers could add value, the team also needs to address other concerns, particularly in terms of defense and overall fit with the team style of play. As fans continue to debate the move, one thing is clear. The Fever are at a crossroads, and every decision counts as they try to build a true contender. When Christy Wallace announced she would be stepping away from the Indiana Fever for the 2025 season, it sent shockwaves through the fan base. While some fans saw it coming, others were left surprised. One thing was clear, though. The Fever now have a gap to fill. Almost immediately, fans began discussing who should replace Wallace, with Aerial Powers' name quickly surfacing as a potential fit. Some fans were enthusiastic about the idea, but others questioned whether Powers was the right move. Let's take a closer look at whether Aerial Powers is the right fit for the Fever or if Indiana should look elsewhere. Powers certainly has a solid case. As a proven scorer, she's shown the ability to take over games, create her own shot, and score from all areas of the floor. Her recent success overseas only adds to her appeal. Pairing her with Caitlin Clark in the backcourt would give Indiana two dynamic scoring threats, which could be exciting for the offense. On paper, the combination of Powers and Clark is tantalizing. Powers has demonstrated she can thrive on teams like the Washington Mystics and Minnesota Lynx, where she was counted on to deliver offensively. However, not everyone is convinced that Powers is the right fit. There are legitimate concerns about how she would mesh with the Fever's current system. Indiana has been rebuilding, but their core is now centered around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Clark, as the floor general, will likely run an offense based on ball movement, quick decisions, and spacing. Her style thrives in a fast-paced, team-oriented system where players work off the ball to create opportunities. The question is whether Powers, known for her ability to create her own shot, fits into this system. She's at her best when she's the primary ball handler, creating plays for herself or others. But in a system built around Clark, will Powers' need for the ball disrupt the flow of the offense? It's a significant question that fans and analysts are debating. There's another aspect to this conversation: defense. While Powers is a decent defender, she's not known for being a game-changer on that end of the floor. In the WNBA, teams that consistently win championships are built on both offense and defense. Elite teams like the Las Vegas Aces rely on strong defensive players who can anchor their team, whether it's Aya Wilson in the paint or Chelsea Gray on the perimeter. Indiana, for all the excitement around Clark, still has a lot of work to do defensively. Aaliyah Boston is a force inside, but the Fever struggle against teams with dominant bigs. They need size, defensive versatility, and players who can guard multiple positions effectively. Powers doesn't provide the kind of defensive upgrade that Indiana needs at this moment. This raises the question: should the Fever target a player who brings defensive prowess or versatility to complement their current roster? Christy Wallace wasn't a superstar, but she brought grit, hustle, and solid defensive instincts to the team. If Indiana is trying to replace Wallace's energy and defensive contributions, Powers isn't exactly a one-to-one swap. This leaves a big hole in the Fever's defense-first mentality, something Wallace helped provide. If Indiana wants to maintain a team-wide defensive mindset, they may need to look for a player who can fill that role. Another significant factor to consider is the Fever's cap space. After Wallace stepped away, the Fever opened up around $80,000 in cap space. While that might sound like a lot, the financial landscape in the WNBA is tight, and teams have to be strategic with every contract. Powers, having previously played on significant contracts with the Lynx, likely won't be looking to take a pay cut. She was making around $155,000 per year before. For the Fever to sign her, they'd have to figure out how to fit her into their salary structure, which could limit their flexibility to address other needs. Is Powers worth the money? Some fans think the Fever should use their available cap space on a younger, defensive-minded wing or even a backup center who could help against taller teams. Some have already suggested the Fever should target a 6 feet 6 inches or 6 feet 7 inches big to bolster their defense, particularly in matchups against teams with strong frontcourts. If Indiana wants to compete for a championship, they can't simply load up on scorers. They need a balanced roster that addresses all areas of need. That said, Powers does bring value. As a proven scorer with something to prove, she could add depth to Indiana's offense and provide leadership in the locker room. Powers has shown she can step up when given the opportunity, and her connection with fans is undeniable. She actively engages with her supporters online, responding to comments and embracing the fan base's energy. This level of engagement is rare and has earned her a loyal following, including many Fever fans who are eagerly pushing for her to join the team.so. Where does this leave the Fever? Ultimately, the decision rests with Indiana's front office. If they're looking for instant scoring and veteran leadership, Powers might be a solid addition. She would provide depth to their offense and bring valuable experience. However, if the Fever are focused on long-term roster construction, filling defensive gaps, and addressing positional needs, they might need to go in a different direction. This decision is pivotal, as it could shape the future of the franchise for years to come. The Fever find themselves at a crucial crossroads. With Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston as the foundation, they have the potential to build something special, but every move from here on out matters. As we've seen with past WNBA champions, success isn't just about collecting talent. It's about building a well-rounded team that can excel in all facets of the game. Teams like the Las Vegas Aces, the current gold standard in the league, are built on a strong balance of offense and defense. The Fever need to decide how best to construct their roster around Clark and Boston, and whether Powers fits into that vision. In the end, the question remains, is Aerial Powers part of Indiana's plan to build a championship contender? That's what we're all waiting to find out. The front office must prioritize what's best for the team, not just the fans' wishes. If they believe Aerial Powers is the missing piece, we could see her in a Fever jersey soon. However, if they focus on the bigger picture, they might opt for a different direction. One thing is clear, the Indiana Fever are at a critical juncture. With the talent and star power of Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, the focus now is on making the right moves to elevate the team into true championship contention. The Aerial Powers debate underscores a larger issue. Indiana needs to be strategic with their roster moves. They can't just add players for the sake of it. The team needs to complement Clark's skill set while maximizing Boston's impact. While Powers could provide an offensive boost, it's important to consider how she would fit into the overall system and whether a defensive-minded player or more size is the better option. The decision is still up in the air, and whatever choice the Fever make will be a clear indicator of their future direction. So, is Aerial Powers the answer, or should the Fever focus on size and defense? That's the question we're all waiting to see unfold. What do you think? Should the Indiana Fever bring in Aerial Powers, or would they be better off prioritizing defense and size? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's hear your opinions. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates. Stay locked in.